Uh, Good evening, all. Firstly, hope all of you are doing well and keeping safe in these challenging times. I'm Rahul. I work with the Wipro Foundation, and I have with me a few of my colleagues besides the speakers for this evening. Krunal and Supriya are there, and I hope other colleagues from the Wipro Foundation will also be joining. As you know, we have scheduled a series of web sessions on child protection and child well-being during the pandemic, Voices from the Field, with expert resource persons this week. Today, we have Professor Shanta Sinha and Sindhu Nayak as our speakers. Before we get to the speakers, I'll briefly share how we have planned the sessions. Each speaker will share their views and experiences with the issues that they have been working on for about 15-20 minutes. I'll be just introducing the speakers briefly and also act as a timekeeper if that's okay. And just have the speakers speak for about 15-20 minutes, and then we can move on to question and answers. So we'd like the sessions to be interactive and participative. So after the speakers are done with their presentations, whether it's a PPT or they just openly share what they want to say, we can move into the question and answer. This will hopefully address some of the questions, challenges, concerns that you have in terms of your own work with children across the country. We also, as Krunal has already posted on chat, to post your questions on the Q&A button, and request you not to post your questions on the chat. Also, if you could generally indicate to which speaker the question is addressed, unless it is to both the speakers or any of the speakers. As a quick hygiene check, request you to please ensure that you have renamed yourself. I don't know, Preeti and some others were asking about how to do that. I hope Trunal can help. Otherwise, it's okay today. So I think we just stay with your current names. I think there is an option when you log in to do that. Please keep yourself on mute and switch off your video unless you're speaking. We will conduct the sessions primarily in English. We have requested the speakers to use a mix of English and Hindi as may be possible. Without further delay, let's move to the first speaker today, Professor Shanta Sinha. Again, none of the speakers need an introduction that way, but in terms of these sessions, we do a short introduction. As all of you know, she's the former chairperson, National Commission for Protection of Child Rights, and Professor, Department of Political Science, University of Hyderabad. She has also served as the Founders Secretary Trustee of the MV Foundation. Today, Professor Shanta Sinha will be sharing with us strategies for awareness among the community that can be undertaken during these times. So from a wide experience working with children and especially out of school children with the MV Foundation and thereafter with NCPCR and in various other capacities, we will move to Professor Shanta Sinha first. Ma'am, over to you.
Thank you, Rahul and Wipro Foundation for giving me this opportunity. And I do hope, as Rahul says, all of you are safe. It has been really very difficult times. Many of us have lost our dear ones, but I think this would gradually come down and we will have to gear ourselves to looking forward to in a positive manner. Now, I have been asked to talk about uh, child protection, child prevention in a larger framework, and I chose to talk mainly about uh, community participation and how prevention of children from falling into uh, 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 relationships which are exploitative, abusive, and where their rights are totally abrogated. I thought I'll give you a bit quick introduction to MV Foundation. Then I will go into the status of children from the field that I have gathered uh, of different age groups during the pandemic. I will then go into what the communities have done, certain NGOs have done, uh, and then I will go into what must be done. So this is the way I will sort of take 5 minutes around each one of these headings. Now, firstly, I should say that I have always believed, and it is based on the experience that we've had, that there is a clear role for community for community participation. And when I say community, it means everybody in a village, individually as well as collectives. It also means, in terms of collectives, the Gram Panchayat, the school management committees, the child protection committees, the youth groups, the Dalit groups, the Adivasi groups, the mothers committee, if there is one, the Anganwadi workers, the Asha workers. So it is like all those who are on one side, who are part of the community, who have their role to reach out to the weakest, to the poorest, and they are the ones who know each individual in their area by the name. That these children are not statistics, but they are names, and they know each one of them. So there is a role for them to reach out to these children. There is also a role to access institutions, and that is where the state comes into play. That the community does not substitute for the institutions, it provides access to the institutions, and institutions would be in the context of children. It would be the Anganwadi centers, it would be the schools, and if it is beyond the village, it is to the high schools, it is to the KGBVs, it is to the hostels, and if it is really for children in need of care and protection, it is to the child line, the child welfare committee, and those that are offered in the JJ system. Because there is a gap between the child and the state, the community has a role to link the child with the state. And it is in the process of this linking the children with the state that the state and its functionaries are strengthened, are empowered, and the gaps in the system gets exposed. So it is so important that there is community mobilization on the one hand, and there is also mobilization towards strengthening of the system on the other. And this is what we have been working on. But all of us know that if you're going to do this, it's not a smooth program. Working on children's rights is a program of resolving conflicts. There is an inherent power struggle when children are withdrawn from work, or when children are going to schools, when children don't get the quality of education they should, or when the Anganwadi food does not come on time. All these are matters of somewhere a hidden power, and those have to be resolved. The communities act very strongly, very powerfully in resolving this conflict. What I'm trying to get at is that protection of children's rights is not a smooth program. It's not a soft program. It is a hard program which involves deep conviction in protecting children's rights. And in doing so, there have been, in the MV Foundation example, we have created villages after villages which are child labor free, where every child has gone to school. What has happened to these villages during the pandemic? Did children go back to work? Is a question one will ask. And then there are some villages where it's about 10 years old, where children have all gone to schools, and it's become such a matter of habit. There has been a norm that has been established, and we are actually grateful. Or, that there is a total abolition of child labor. The norm has been already established on children going to, sorry, I just got, yeah, the norm has been established. So, there are areas where one has not worked for that long, where there is a problem of there is a problem of children not having sturdy community support, and where the structural inequities or where the values of patriarchy are still entrenched, that these children have become very, very vulnerable. So I will talk about areas where there has not been a full abolition of child labor, but where MVF has a presence, but maybe a presence of only 4 or 5 years, and it has not still established a social norm that every child must be school and every child must be protected. It is in these areas, I think, there is a greatest vulnerability of children. We found that during the COVID times, the first week or first 2 weeks of lockdown, the family got together, and it seems it's the first time that the mother, the father, the siblings, the grandparents are under the roof, and they're beginning to enjoy each one's company. But this did not last long. You find that soon the reserve has gone, that there has not been much uh, uh, support in terms of income. There has not been much, and the villages have been also burdened with many migrant laborers who got back to the village, and the vulnerability increased phenomenally. It is then you found that the fabric of the family, which they were beginning to enjoy, actually crumbled. Here you find that, and simultaneously the schools have been closed. With closure of schools, children had nowhere to go, and in fact, it had been very difficult for them to stay at home and had nowhere to go, and they are hungry. So it is in this context that you find that children have been the most vulnerable. And by the time of June, many of these children, even as young as 7 to 8 year old, were pushed to work. Many have resisted, but they couldn't have resisted because they found that there were no rations available in the house, and they had to work. You found that even girls had worked in large groups, and older children had even more burden on them. Then we wondered, did all the community mobilization that we did in the last 3 or 4 years in these new areas actually uh, of no use? Was all this actually reversed? So is a social norm, once it is established, reversible? In the older areas, they could not reverse it. But in the new areas, you found that they were totally reversed. That the staying capacity of the parents was so limited that children went on to pluck cotton, children went to chili farms, there were boys who went to construction work on brick kilns. There was rampant child labor everywhere. And also, I think it's mostly to do with the closure of schools. And also, of course, there is no food support that is coming for children. So this is a scenario. On top of it, the midday meal scheme, which should have continued, didn't continue. So children became very anxious, very uncertain about their future. It hit the girls the worst. I think these were the girls who were in, especially in classes 9, 10, 11, and 12. To reach up to that stage itself is a matter of huge struggle. They have fought gender discrimination, they have fought domestic work, they have fought child marriages, they have resisted uh, all kinds of sexual harassment, eve teasing, and they've reached up to that level, and they were dreaming of their future. On top of it, you found that they even educated their parents to think that they are going to be something different from them. And parents too were planning for a better future for these children, these girls especially. And you find that all that crumbled again. Girls were, I mean, families could not leave their girls home when they went out to work, and they had to sort of uh, push them into work just because they thought their own house is not a safe place for the girls to stay back. And on top of it, when they went to work, these were school children who never worked before, and they complained of body ache. We've had any number of Zoom meetings with these girls, and they said that they just didn't want to work. And it was heat so strong. There were blisters in their hands, blisters in their feet, but then they were hungry and they had to work. And it was terrible times for these girls. It continues for them being so terrible. And then when they return home, there is this pressure from everywhere saying that, look, it's not safe for these girls to be in our house. Let them get married. So quickly it became a kind of another viral that you will have to get our daughters married as soon as possible, that they must go away. Here at this juncture, we found that all the mobilization that we did came of some use. When girls' marriages were fixed, we had earlier formed gender committees, girls' committees, Kishori Balika committees. They began to assert, and they said that we will not get married. They knew the child line, they knew the child welfare committee, they knew the gram panchayats, they knew the support structures which were available in the village. They formed their own WhatsApp groups wherever they can, and they resisted. They said, no, simply no, we will not get married. Some succeeded, some did not. But then, because of the work that one did, I think it gave strength to the girls to exercise agency and to remain unmarried and to still convince the parents that, look, we know the schools will reopen, we know the colleges will reopen, you dreamt about our future, we have dreamt about future, and let us go ahead. So in a way, social mobilization earlier gave strong, firm conviction, even in these so-called not so strong areas where children's, especially girls' lives, were prevented from getting into marriage. But we couldn't prevent many of them from getting into child labor because there were just no schools. Where was the alternative? What do you offer as an alternative? And that is when we found out that the role of the school, is much more. The role of the school, आप माफ करना चाहिए कि हम हिंदी में इतना अच्छा नहीं बोल सकते, फिर भी कोशिश करेंगे. जो the girls who have, uh, we found that all this was not so much because they're so vulnerable and poor. It has also got to do with the closure of schools. Let me give you about 4 or 5 things that the schools actually did in addition to the learning that it did. Schools were safe places for children. It prevented them from getting into child marriage. It prevented them from getting into child labor. Schools were places that gave a routine to children. It kind of, in the morning, they get up, they pack their school bags, they go to school, they go with friends, they have a peer group, they come back. So schools played that role of giving them a socializing role, a role of peer group, a role of friendship, which I think is very, very important. Schools were also a place where they could think of future and a place where children start thinking about themselves, discovering themselves. If they work hard, they work hard for themselves. A person who is a child laborer is not working for himself or herself, he's working for somebody else. But a school is where you're working for yourself, your development, your growth. So it's very empowering. So we found that these were some of the functions of the school which could have been taken over by any other institution. Learning, teaching may be a difficult aspect, but then these functions, they could have been support groups. And this is exactly what happened in many villages where we are working. We found that there were gram panchayats which performed these roles. There were Dalit groups which performed these roles. There were youth volunteers who performed these roles. And we have examples of village learning centers of the Telangana social welfare residential schools. There are examples of, say, MV Foundation's program itself in Bihar and in some places in Telangana. There were examples of Aspire in Orissa, where they started mobilizing communities to have small centers for children to engage them, utilizing social distance methods to give them confidence, to counsel them, to tell them, look, you don't have to feel bad that the schools are closed. It is, of course, bad, but then don't stop dreaming, and let's start creating spaces where children become children and where they claim those spaces as their own. So this is what has happened, and I think it's so important. And there are some places where we've set up libraries, we've set up reading rooms. The schools opened their trunk boxes, distributed the books. We got the school teachers to distribute sports material. So, many things that can happen during COVID, which makes the village vibrant. So, from a situation of as if there is a dead end, there were possibilities that were opening up. But one possibility also was of this, what online education, which of course we have all seen has failed. And we all know how iniquitous it is. And there is enough criticism over it. And we've also found out that it just doesn't work. I mean, there can't be a substitute for teaching through schools. But except for that role of teaching and learning, other functions of the schools could be taken over. The last thing is I do not know how much time I have. I've not kept track of the time. I think what is important is that we will have to see that children are not anxious. They must know that they are being heard. They must know that they can go to someone when they have problems. We have seen when girls, many of them, as I told you, 9th, 10th, 11th, they don't know what's happening to them. They don't know if the education will continue. There's nobody to reassure them, even with boys also, but there's nobody to tell them, look, it's okay, it will revive, don't worry. That kind of a noise or sound is just not there. And I think that is the kind of role one is playing, to reassure them, to tell them that, look, you don't have to feel lonely. Your education will come back and you will be on track. What is important is that you have to track every child. And we found that an area-based approach is the best thing that can happen. We get the Gram Panchayats, school management committees to look at the attendance register. 98% of names of children are already in the register. So one doesn't have to do a new survey, a new data collection. So you will have to just get these attendance registers and track every child in the attendance registers to see that they are safe. Yeah, I'm saying this because every time there is a need for doing some work of prevention, for universal care, then quickly there is a person who suggests, where is the data? Let's do research first. I think it's time we put research and data to the side. And if we leave it to the communities, they will find their own ways of, within their own area, how to track every child. And they've been doing that. And the data is available. As I told you, they're not numbers, they're faces. If you trust them, every child will be tracked and every child will be protected. And I think that is very, very important. Then the other thing that is very important is the role of the mobilizer. Especially, I think the NGOs would know this better. I think there's a key to the well-being of children, and they are the ones who are working with such great dedication, who are unsung heroes. This also includes the Anganwadi worker and the Asha worker, but I'm talking about the NGOs, grassroots level organizers who know every child, who have access to every child, who are planning for every child. And if they have, say, in their list of children, some 300 children whom they have to track through Gram Panchayats, they have made 300 plans. And they know how to resolve issues for them. They're linking children to the government. But what I think the government has not done is that that doesn't have a child protection policy. Because so far, no government, no state government has announced any child policy. And in fact, so much of budgets towards children has been saved. You have the budget allocated towards hostels. They have not spent for more than a year. For KGBVs, they were not spent for more than a year. The noon meal scheme, that was unspent. There were scholarships that were not given. There were examinations to be conducted and budgets for that. That was not spent. So if you make a list of all the amounts that are available for children through the Women and Child Development programs and through the government, you find that huge amounts there are still for children. All they had to do is decentralize, park the resources with Gram Panchayats, trust them to take care of children and make plans and utilize the resources to protect them and to prevent them from joining joining the labor force or getting into marriage or being hungry or starving. It's a shame that the government has not done enough, and it's a shame that it thinks they can that all this is happening because of children's vulnerability, children's poverty, children's lack of income because of hunger. But let me tell you, children rights are so important. State has a duty to protect them. It is not their poverty, it is not their hunger that is making them vulnerable. It's lack of state action and lack of any knowledge about what is happening to children is what is the bane of the society. And I would like to end saying that we must raise our voice and we must see that there should be a prevention of children from getting into risk situations and creating as many spaces as possible in local communities where they can claim as their own. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. That was exactly within time also. Sindhu, I'll just take 5 minutes if I may before we move on to you. थोड़ा संक्षेप में मैं बताने का कोशिश करता हूँ. हम लोग पहले भी बता दिए थे कि हिंदी में जैसे स्पीकर्स लोगों को सुविधा होगी वैसे बताएंगे. तो मेरा भी हिंदी उतना अच्छा नहीं है, लेकिन हम संक्षेप में थोड़ा हिंदी में बताने का कोशिश करते हैं। मैम जो कह रहे थे कि एमबी फाउंडेशन के जो एक्सपीरियंस है उसके आधार पे जो कम्युनिटी लेवल पे जो काम किया जा सकता है इस संदर्भ में ग्राम पंचायती के साथ, कम्युनिटी के हर मेंबर के साथ, आंगनवाड़ी के साथ, स्कूल के साथ, आशा वर्कर के साथ, ताकि बच्चे कोई शोषण के काम में जुड़ ना जाए, जो जितना हम लोग देख रहे हैं तो एक काफ़ी हद तक बहुत सारे राज्यों में देश भर में हो रहा है। तो उससे हम लोग थोड़ा बच के रहे तो कैसे ये स्थिति हम लोग कम्युनिटी के द्वारा ला पाए, तो इसी के बारे में बात कर रहे थे। तो इसमें एक तो बता रहे थे कि एमबी फाउंडेशन का जो काम है इसमें काफ़ी हद तक कि गर्ल्स अर्ली मैरिज ये रुक पाए, क्योंकि सोशल मोबिलाइजेशन एक तरफ से आगे अगर हो चुका है तो इनमें एक जागरूकता आती है कि हम लोग आगे जाके कुछ करना चाहते हैं, हम लोग जल्दी शादी नहीं करना चाहते हैं, तो वो अपने परिवार के साथ वो बातचीत करके वो थोड़ा आगे बढ़ा पाते हैं। लेकिन काम में जुड़ जाने का जो एक संदर्भ है वो काफ़ी हद तक ये रोका नहीं जा सकता है। लेकिन अगर हम लोग लोकल लेवल जो बॉडीज़ है, पंचायती राज हो, आशा के साथ, आंगनवाड़ी के साथ, और इसमें प्रोफेसर सिन्हा बता रहे थे कि हर बच्चे का ट्रैकिंग का जो एक मसला है, जो हर चाइल्ड ट्रैकिंग और उसका डेटा जो लोकल लेवल पे अवेलेबल है, उसके ज़रिए लोकल लेवल पे हम लोग कि हर बच्चे का क्या स्थिति है। लोकल लेवल पे कुछ विलेज लर्निंग सेंटर्स, आप लोग भी ऐसे काम में बहुत सारी जगह जुड़े हुए हैं कि लाइब्रेरी का कुछ उपाय हो। स्कूल चालू नहीं है, ये एक बड़ी बात है, 1-1.5 साल हो गया स्कूल चालू नहीं है, लेकिन लोकल संदर्भ में हम लोग वॉलंटियर्स के जरिए, यूथ ग्रुप्स के जरिए, पंचायती राज के जरिए अगर लोकल स्कूलिंग का व्यवस्था अगर कम्युनिटी में शुरू कर सकते हैं, जैसे एमबी फाउंडेशन का कुछ एक्सपीरियंस बता रहे थे मैम, तो उस हिसाब से बच्चों का काम में लग जाना वो भी हम लोग काफ़ी हद तक रोक सकते हैं। तो इसी के बारे में बात कर रहे थे। और चाइल्ड प्रोटेक्शन के बारे में सरकार के पास पैसा है, बहुत सारा पैसा बजट से बचा हुआ है, कुछ कुछ खर्च नहीं हुआ है, लेकिन सरकार को भी एक जिम्मेदारी निभानी है अपने तरफ से चाइल्ड राइट्स के बारे में। इसके बारे में बता रहे थे। शायद मैं मेरा हिंदी उतना ये नहीं है, लेकिन आशा रखते हैं कि थोड़ा बहुत हम बता पाएँ। तो इसके आगे हम लोग what we'll do is move on to the next speaker. Sindhu, if you can come on, please. Thank you. So our second speaker today is Sindhu Nayak. Sindhu led the India Literacy Project for about 8 years. She has been working in the child protection sector with a focus on adoption, has been part of the Karnataka drafting team for the JJ rules and foster care guidelines. She has been a resource person for the Central Adoption Resource Authority and also the State Adoption Resource Agency in Karnataka on adoption. Sindhu today will be speaking on children who are bereft of parental care, जिसको बच्चे का सपोर्ट, जिसको अभिभावक का सपोर्ट नहीं है इस संदर्भ में, उनका सपोर्ट कैसे किया जा सकता है कम्युनिटी के जरिए, स्टेट के जरिए, सपोर्ट थ्रू द कम्युनिटी एंड स्टेट मैकेनिज्म्स टू सपोर्ट चिल्ड्रन विदाउट पेरेंटल केयर. ओवर टू यू सिंधु. Thank you.
Thank you, Rahul and team, for inviting me for this webinar session. और सबको मेरा नमस्कार. मैं हिंदी और अंग्रेजी मिला के बात करने की कोशिश करूंगी. मेरी हिंदी इतनी अच्छी नहीं है तो बीच बीच में शायद ज़्यादा अंग्रेजी हो जाएगा, फिर भी मैं कोशिश करूंगी कि हिंदी ज़्यादा शामिल करने के लिए. अब मैं मेरा वीडियो स्टॉप करूंगी क्योंकि मेरे यहाँ का बैंडविड्थ थोड़ा कम है, और अगर मैं वीडियो शुरू करूं तो कहीं कभी कट जाता है. एंड आई विल नाउ स्टार्ट माय प्रेजेंटेशन. Is it visible to everybody?
Yes,
क्या आप सब देख सकते हैं?
हाँ सिंधु.
हाँ जी. तो जैसे कि राहुल ने बताया था, मेरा विषय मुझे जो दिया है, the topic that has been given to me is about children who do not have parental care, जहाँ जिनके माता पिता गुजर गए हैं या माता पिता उनकी देखभाल के लिए नहीं है. तो ऐसे बच्चे जब भी आते हैं अभी, और ये जो कोरोना के टाइम में है बहुत ही हो गया है, आपको पता है, सेकेंड सर्ज के टाइम में, क्योंकि सेकेंड सर्ज में हमारे परिवारों में भी ऐसे काफी लोग गुजर गए हैं, हमारे जान पहचान वाले, हमारे पड़ोसी, किसी ना किसी के घर में हमें यही सुनाई दे रहा है कि कोई अस्पताल में है या कोई गुजर गए हैं। तो हम ये देखेंगे मेरे प्रेजेंटेशन में, बहुत संक्षिप्त में मैं आई विल गो थ्रू इट, और मेरा फोकस होगा एडॉप्शन। एडॉप्शन क्यों? क्योंकि almost last 2 weeks all of us have started getting these WhatsApp messages. सबसे पहले WhatsApp messages मेरे को आया था शायद 1 मई पे, प्रियंका का। कोई तो भी लड़की है, छोटी लड़की प्रियंका, 1 दिन की है और उसको एडॉप्शन में दे रहे हैं। या फिर बाद में एक मैसेज आया था कि वेणी करके एक हैं जिसके पास 2 ब्राह्मण बच्चे हैं और उनको एडॉप्शन में देने वाले हैं। तो ऐसे जो है आज फोकस काफी ज्यादा एडॉप्शन पे हो रहा है, इसीलिए मैं थोड़ा एडॉप्शन पे ज्यादा स्ट्रेस करके बात करूंगी। हालांकि डॉक्टर शांता सिन्हा ने बहुत अच्छी तरह बताया कि कम्युनिटी में कैसे प्रोसेसेस कर सकते हैं फॉर ट्रैकिंग चिल्ड्रन सो दैट दे डू नॉट succumb or they are not vulnerable to such kind of trafficking either for adoption or for any other means, भले ही उनके पेरेंट्स गुजर गए हो। कौन है ये बच्चे जो जिनके पास पेरेंट्स नहीं है और क्यों होता है ये? एक तो उनके माता पिता कोविड के कारण दे हैव प्रॉब्ली पास्ड अवे। सेकेंड इज जब भी एक माँ या पिता जो भी हैं गुजर गए हैं और दूसरा जो है अस्पताल में है, और तीसरा संदर्भ ऐसे हो सकता है कि एक माता पिता जो हैं उनमें से माता या पिता अस्पताल में हैं और दूसरा जो है वो गांव में नहीं है, शहर में नहीं है, शायद दूसरे गांव शहर में चला गया हो। तो क्या होता है? सबसे पहले जो है इस बच्चे का सिचुएशन क्या है, इसके ऊपर थोड़ा जिक्र होना चाहिए। डज दिस चाइल्ड नीड टेम्पररी केयर? डज दिस चाइल्ड नीड परमानेंट केयर? पेरेंट का क्या है? व्हाट डज द पेरेंट वांट? पेरेंट का क्या प्रेफरेंस है? कहाँ जाना चाहिए बच्चा? बच्चे के लिए क्या सुविधाएं चाहिए? फिर जेंडर और एज की आइडेंटिटी, डिसेबिलिटी की आइडेंटिटी, डिसेबिलिटी का फैक्टर लेना है। फिर सिबलिंग है कि नहीं, क्योंकि दो बच्चे हैं या 3 बच्चे हैं तो उनको साथ में क्या सपोर्ट दिया जा सकता है, और फिर इमीडिएट नीड्स क्या है। मैं इस स्लाइड पे ज्यादा टाइम नहीं बिताने वाली हूँ क्योंकि कल स्वागता राहा आने वाली हैं और ये इस पे बहुत ज्यादा डिटेल में आपसे बात करेंगी, ठीक है। एंड व्हाट आर द ऑल्टरनेटिव्स अवेलेबल, ये इसके ऊपर भी थोड़ा सा, वंस वी असेस द सिचुएशन वी लुक एट द ऑल्टरनेटिव्स। Is there somebody in the relatives, extended family, neighbor, family, friends who are available for temporary care? अगर कोई नहीं है, माता पिता अस्पताल में है या माता पिता घर में होके even then they are very sick and they are themselves in isolation, तो ऐसे माहौल में क्या है ना, नर्स, नैनी, चाइल्ड केयर वर्कर be given to them on a temporary basis till the parent or relative come। तो टेम्पररी कुछ अरेंजमेंट किया जा सकता है क्या? ये एक्सप्लोरेशन, ये पूरे ऑल्टरनेटिव्स एक्सप्लोर करने के बाद फिर हमें देखना है कि शुड वी कॉल अप 1098 और स्टेट चाइल्ड हेल्पलाइन और पुलिस और डिस्ट्रिक्ट चाइल्ड प्रोटेक्शन यूनिट और चाइल्ड वेलफेयर कमेटी। तो हम बोल रहे हैं कि बिफोर द चाइल्ड गोज इनटू द केयर ऑफ द स्टेट, कैन वी एक्सप्लोर ऑल्टरनेटिव्स विद इन द कम्युनिटी, विद इन द फैमिली, within the village that can help to take care of the child। स्वागता राहा आपको और अच्छी तरह कल समझाएंगी इसके बारे में। तो ये डिसीजन कौन लेता है? जब भी 1098 को कॉल करते हैं तो चाइल्ड लाइन जाके रेस्क्यू करता है और चाइल्ड वेलफेयर कमेटी के सामने बच्चे को लेके जाते हैं 24 घंटे में, कभी कभी थोड़ा ज्यादा टाइम भी हो सकता है, बट इट्स द चाइल्ड वेलफेयर कमेटी who takes the decision, and these decisions are taken based on certain principles of the Juvenile Justice Act। और मैं यहाँ पे 5 प्रिंसिपल्स ही प्रेजेंट कर रही हूँ आपको, इस पे भी ज्यादा जिक्र नहीं करूंगी। One is principle of best interest of the child, the second is principle of placement of the child in his own socio-cultural environment, उसको ज्यादा हम प्रायोरिटी देंगे कि उसके ही माहौल में बच्चे को प्लेस करें। तीसरा, जो भी हम कर रहे हैं उसमें privacy और confidentiality of the child should be respected, of the family should be respected। चौथा, family responsibility is the first principle। and finally, जो भी हम लोग जब भी हम लोग बच्चे के रिहेबिलिटेशन के बारे में बात करते हैं तो इंस्टीट्यूशनलाइजेशन इज द मेजर ऑफ लास्ट रिसोर्ट। तो अब आए कि जब भी बच्चा को हम रेस्क्यू करते हैं, 109 रेस्क्यू करता है और CWC के सामने पेश करता है। आपको पता है कि कोविड के टाइम पे मोस्ट ऑफ द टाइम इट्स वर्चुअल मीटिंग विद द CWCs। तो इसमें सबसे पहले बच्चे को क्वारंटाइन केयर में प्लेस करेंगे और बच्चे का टेस्टिंग भी करेंगे, क्योंकि काफी बार ऐसा होता है कि माता पिता का टेस्टिंग हो जाता है लेकिन बच्चे का टेस्टिंग नहीं होता है। तो अगर बच्चे का टेस्टिंग नहीं हुआ तो हम लोग उसको कोई टेम्पररी प्लेसमेंट या शॉर्ट टर्म केयर में नहीं डाल सकते हैं जब तक उसके रिजल्ट हैं। तो बच्चे का टेस्टिंग होगा। Then if the child tests negative, we will consider temporary short-term care. If the child tests positive, then we will place the child in a COVID care center. If the child has mild or is asymptomatic यानी उसको कुछ symptoms नहीं है, mild यानी हल्का फुल्का थोड़ा कोल्ड हो सकता है, बुखार नहीं है, वैसे है तो उसको कोविड केयर सेंटर में प्लेस कर सकते हैं। अभी काफी स्टेट गवर्नमेंट्स और NGOs ने बच्चों के लिए खास क्वारंटाइन सेंटर्स स्टार्ट किए हैं और कोविड केयर सेंटर्स भी स्टार्ट किए हैं। बेंगलोर में हमारे पास 4 क्वारंटाइन सेंटर्स हैं और एक कोविड केयर सेंटर है खास बच्चों के लिए, नॉट फॉर एनी एडल्ट। सो दिस इज स्टार्टिंग नाउ, क्योंकि आपको पता है कि सेकेंड सर्ज में बच्चों को काफी इफेक्ट हुआ है मोर देन द फर्स्ट सर्ज। फर्स्ट सर्ज में लोग बोल रहे थे कि नंबर ऑफ चिल्ड्रन वर अबाउट 4 to 5%, लेकिन अब शायद 10 to 11% बच्चे हैं इसमें। फिर अगर बच्चा नेगेटिव टेस्ट हुआ तो अभी बच्चे को टेम्पररी शॉर्ट टर्म केयर देनी है। तो क्या है टेम्पररी शॉर्ट टर्म केयर, व्हाट आर द ऑप्शंस? सो सबसे पहले वी आर लुकिंग एट एक्सटेंडेड फैमिली ऑफ द चाइल्ड। सो अगर बच्चे का कोई रिलेटिव है, किनशिप है, जो बच्चे को केयर देने के लिए तैयार है, स्पेशली बिकॉज नाउ द चाइल्ड हैज टेस्टेड नेगेटिव, तो इस फैमिली के साथ CWC with a short term placement order will place the child with supervision and may or may not give sponsorship to the child. क्योंकि अभी अगर if the family is capable of taking care of the child, is financially sound, तो उसको sponsorship की जरूरत नहीं है। But we also know that a large majority of our country families are not able to provide them for themselves, and ये पूरे लॉकडाउन में लाइवलीहुड का तो सबका कबाड़ा हो गया है। तो people are financially insecure and a sponsorship may be necessary for these families who have opened their hearts and their homes to these child. दूसरा जो हम लोग देख रहे हैं, ये हम कर्नाटक में इसको हम लोग स्टार्ट कर रहे हैं, प्राइमरीली बेंगलोर में, फैमिली बेस्ड टेम्पररी केयर विद अनरिलेटेड फैमिली एज फिट पर्सन्स। तो हमने क्या किया है, जब ये मैसेजेस आने लगे कि बच्चा एडॉप्शन के लिए है या बच्चे के पेरेंट्स गुजर गए हैं, ऐसे मैसेजेस आने लगे, तो सबसे पहले one of our colleagues wrote out a small simple message to adoptive families who have adopted under the JJ Act. क्या आप अपना घर एक और बच्चे के लिए खोलने को तैयार हैं? Not for permanent basis, but temporary basis, बहुत छोटे टाइम के लिए, 1 महीना या 2 महीना, जब तक उसकी एक्सटेंडेड फैमिली उसको ले नहीं जाए, या उसके पेरेंट्स अभी अस्पताल में हैं, अस्पताल में उनका ट्रीटमेंट होके वो आएंगे, तभी वो बच्चे को ले जाएंगे। तब तक बच्चा, rather than stay in the institution for short term care, can the child be placed in temporary care. और उसमें you all will be very surprised to note that we got 250 odd responses, और हमने उसमें से 25 families को चुने हैं who have experience of more than 10 years in taking care of, in parenting children, और उन पेरेंट्स को हमने एक ओरिएंटेशन भी दिया है, and now we are moving forward in terms of making a pool of such families who will be available to take children in temporary care, and these will have to be declared as recognized as fit person by the CWC. नहीं तो फोस्टर केयर का भी ऑप्शन है, जो मॉडल फोस्टर केयर गाइडलाइंस के तहत, या अगर स्टेट के फोस्टर केयर गाइडलाइंस है उसके तहत उनको शॉर्ट टर्म में उनके साथ प्लेस किया जा सकता है। देन ऑफ कोर्स वी हैव इंस्टीट्यूशनल केयर, जो हमें सब पता है कि हर राज्य में स्पेशलाइज्ड एडॉप्शन एजेंसीज हैं जो 0 to 6 एज ग्रुप के बच्चों को रखते हैं, और 6 इयर्स के ऊपर वाले जो बच्चे हैं उनको चाइल्ड केयर इंस्टीट्यूशन में भेज सकते हैं। I want to say here that today, with help of some of my other colleagues, I have found out that there has been family financial support announced by Gujarat, Telangana, Assam, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, And Andhra Pradesh, I think, has announced something like 10 lakhs for children who have lost both their parents. And Karnataka is also thinking of coming up with some similar scheme, probably similar to Andhra Pradesh. तो जब ही अभी बच्चे का short term placement हो चुका है, now the child, the extended family has not been able to come and take care of the child after a month, or for some reason, even if there are parents are still undergoing treatment, are not able to take care of the child. So in this case, they will extend the care with the extended family if it's locally available with supervision. They can convert the fit family, temporary fit family into foster care, or look at permanency planning through adoption for those children who do not have both parents and no extended family is willing to take care of the child. अगर extended family दूसरे गांव में है, दूसरे शहर में है, दूसरे डिस्ट्रिक्ट में है, तब भी हम इस बच्चे को एडॉप्शन में नहीं दे सकते हैं जब तक वो extended family हमें ये ना बताएं कि इस बच्चे को हम देखभाल नहीं कर सकते हैं, तब तक हम इस बच्चे को एडॉप्शन में नहीं देंगे. And of course, अगर वो कुछ नहीं है तो institutional care through a specialized adoption agency or child care agency, but always non-institutional care options will be exhausted. Permanency planning through adoption will be exhausted, and only then would we look for a specialized adoption agency or child care institution. जिन बच्चे के दोनों माँ बाप गुजर गए हैं उनको शायद लीगल सपोर्ट की जरूरत होगी, especially if there are legal dues from employers of parents, if there are assets in the name of the child, insurance claims to be made. All this legal support can be done to the DLSA, and a guardian may need to be appointed for the child's property until the child becomes a major. इसके बारे में भी कल स्वागता रहा जिक्र करेंगी, इसके बारे में डिटेल करके बताएंगी आपको, तो मैं इस पे ज्यादा बात नहीं करने वाली. तो मैं सीधा आती हूँ मेरे टॉपिक के, विच इज एडॉप्शन. तो एडॉप्शन यानी क्या? एंड आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट एडॉप्शन अंडर द जुवेनाइल जस्टिस एक्ट. सो जुवेनाइल जस्टिस एक्ट के तहत एडॉप्शन का एक डेफिनेशन है, और वो है कि इट्स अ प्रोसेस through which an adopted child is permanently separated from the biological parents and becomes a lawful child of his adopted parents. यानी जब दत्तक ग्रहण होता है तो दत्तक ग्रहण का जब भी फाइनल ऑर्डर कोर्ट में आता है, कोर्ट से आता है, तभी बच्चे का उसके बायोलॉजिकल फैमिली के साथ ties are broken legally and the child becomes a lawful child of the parents who are adopting. जो जिन्होंने गोद में लिया है उनका वो ऐसे ही बच्चा होता है जैसे कि उसका जन्म उस फैमिली में हुआ हो, और वे उस बच्चे को वही राइट्स, प्रिविलेजेस और रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटीज मिलते हैं जो एक बायोलॉजिकल बच्चे को मिलते हैं. तो कौन से बच्चे को एडॉप्शन में दे सकते हैं? एक तो बच्चा अनाथ हो. अनाथ यानी क्या? अनाथ यानी नॉट जस्ट पेरेंट्स who have passed away, a child without biological parents or a legal guardian, and whose legal guardian is not willing to take care or is capable of taking care of the child, तब ही इस बच्चे को एडॉप्शन में दे सकते हैं. दूसरा, abandoned child यानी जिस बच्चे को has been deserted by biological parents or guardians, and such child will be declared legally she'll be declared abandoned by the CWC. और तीसरा जो है सरेंडर्ड चाइल्ड, यानी जिस बच्चे को उसके माँ बाप, माँ या पिता या दोनों CWC के सामने आके बच्चे को दे देते हैं. आई थिंक द हिंदी वर्ड इज अभ्यर्पित करते हैं कि we are not able to take care of the child because of whatever reason, mostly physical, emotional, very often it's social reasons, and now it's also financial reasons. But before the CWC takes this child as a surrendered child, the CWC and the district child protection units are supposed to identify all the schemes that are available by the government to help these families to take care of the child by themselves. So अगर health के कारण कर रहे हैं तो क्या health scheme है जिससे ये मदर का ट्रीटमेंट हो सके ताकि वो अपने बच्चे का खुद देखभाल कर सके. If it is इकोनॉमिकल, देन व्हाट आर द इकोनॉमिकल स्कीम्स दैट आर अवेलेबल, और स्पॉन्सरशिप भी इसमें आता है। एक बात मैं बताना चाहती हूँ इसमें कि डायरेक्ट प्लेसमेंट ऑफ एन अबैंडन्ड, रेलिंक्विश्ड एंड ऑर्फन चाइल्ड, यानी अभी जो हम बात कर रहे हैं कोविड के कारण बहुत बच्चे अनाथ हो रहे हैं, और अनाथ का डेफिनेशन मैंने बताया है पहले। तो अगर ऐसे बच्चे अनाथ हैं तो इन बच्चों का एडॉप्शन डायरेक्ट नहीं हो सकता है। तो कोई भी बताए कि इन बच्चों के पेरेंट्स गुजर गए, इस बच्चे को और एक फैमिली में प्लेस करना, दैट डायरेक्ट प्लेसमेंट इज अ वायलेशन ऑफ द लॉ, एंड देयर आर penal provisions under section 80 and 81 of the Juvenile Justice Act. तो बच्चे को अगर अडॉप्शन में देना है तो उसमें देयर इज अ होल सेट ऑफ प्रोसीजर्स एंड रूल्स। सबसे पहले इस बच्चे को लीगली फ्री डिक्लेयर होना चाहिए फॉर एडॉप्शन, और ये करते हैं चाइल्ड वेलफेयर कमिटी ऑफ दैट डिस्ट्रिक्ट। अगर कोविड-19 के संदर्भ में अगर बच्चा ऐसे अनाथ पाया जाए, दे विल ट्राई देयर बेस्ट टू फाइंड द एक्सटेंडेड फैमिली ऑफ दैट चाइल्ड, ट्राई देयर बेस्ट टू रेस्टोर द चाइल्ड टू द एक्सटेंडेड फैमिली, और अगर वो नहीं हो, then they will place the child in adoption by uploading the child's data in Carings. दूसरी बात जो है इसका eligibility, there are only certain set of people who are eligible for adoption. They need to satisfy certain criteria which is defined under section 57 of the Juvenile Justice Act, and they need to register themselves for adoption under adoption regulations, which is enabled through a centralized system called Carings. काफी मुझे हर दिन एटलीस्ट 2 कॉल आते हैं वो प्रियंका के मैसेज के बाद, इसीलिए मुझे वो प्रियंका का नाम मेरे सर में घुसा है। हर दिन 2-3 कॉल आते हैं बाय पेरेंट्स हु आर चाइल्डलेस, हु वांट टू अडॉप्ट, और वो पूछते हैं कि अच्छा अगर कोविड का बच्चा है तो विल यू फास्ट ट्रैक द चाइल्ड्स अडॉप्शन। सम ऑफ दीज पेरेंट्स आर रजिस्टर्ड फॉर अडॉप्शन, सम ऑफ दीज पेरेंट्स आर नॉट रजिस्टर्ड फॉर अडॉप्शन, लेकिन उनको वो बहुत उनके भी दुख हैं, उनके भी प्रॉब्लम्स हैं। Many of them have been waiting for a long time to have their own child and have not been able to do so after multiple IVFs. So they are a lot of them are in a lot of emotional pain and they see this now as an opportunity. तो उनका सबसे पहले प्रश्न होता है मेरे साथ कि is the adoption going to be fast tracked? Are these children going to be placed quickly in adoption? And I have to tell them that there are no such plans as of now. It's going to follow the same adoption regulations, the same provisions of the Juvenile Justice Act, and this child has to be declared legally free for adoption. And the first priority before the child is declared legally free is to explore family options for the child within the family. So just to kind of reiterate, Carings is the system. It's an online system for facilitating and monitoring adoption. और जो भी adoption होगा, जब बच्चा adoption के लिए free होगा, यानी legally free for adoption होगा, तो उस बच्चे का information will be uploaded in Carings, and then simultaneously families will also register और उनका matching वो Carings में होगा। थोड़ा देखते हैं कि क्या-क्या measures have been initiated by the center and state for preventing illegal adoption. So एक order आया था आपको सब एक order आया था 4th of May में by Ministry of Health and Family Welfare to amend the admission procedure, asking the hospitals who are admitting the person who has come for COVID treatment to nominate a person, to give the details of a person whom they nominate, to whom the hospitals can hand over the child just in case something untoward happens to the parent. दूसरा जो है काफी circulars भी गए हैं hospitals को to display 1098 CWC, DCPU and local CCI numbers as well as other facilities. So all this information should be displayed in the hospitals. A lot of circulars and IEC material is being made by the MWCD, CARA, then the State Child Commissions and the Department of Women and Child regarding illegality of direct adoption. तो posters भी बने हैं जो social media में लोग share कर रहे हैं, but not enough is being done about it. And all of you in the communities need to spread this word that direct adoption of orphan, that is, first of all, we have to establish that the child is an orphan, and even then there is no direct adoption of these children. It will have to go through the Juvenile Justice Act. States are notifying standard operating procedures on how to respond to these children who do not have parental care, who have been separated from their parents. In Delhi, the DCPCR, I believe, is reaching out to families from a database of the government to find out what is the status of these children और उनके needs क्या हैं. तो उन्होंने शायद health department से एक database लिया है और वो they are trying to find families who are below 45, adults who are below 45 who have passed away और उनको call करके पूछ रहे हैं कि बच्चे का situation क्या है. Okay. Cash transfer sponsorship schemes are now being announced by various state governments. This had to happen. In fact, not enough is happening in this. There is a sponsorship scheme under ICPS for God knows how many years, but we know that it has been poorly implemented. And जैसे कि शांता सिन्हा जी ने कहा था, ये एक ऐसा स्कीम है जहाँ पे पैसे किसी ने यूज किए ही नहीं बराबर बच्चों के लिए. पता नहीं कितने स्टेट्स में यूज किए हैं. Or this is the time when it has to be used. Adoption is the last step in the entire process. Supporting these families, extended families, to take care of these children through sponsorship schemes is something that needs to be done. So center or state के साथ साथ NGOs, CSOs और voluntary organizations भी are taking initiatives. काफी जगह क्वारंटीन सेंटर स्टार्ट किया है, काफी जगह कोविड केयर सेंटर स्टार्ट किए हैं. They're taking care of nutrition, health needs. आप लोग भी कर रहे होंगे काफी food distribution, monitoring of children's health in their families, monitoring of family health, temporary care arrangements. अगर दोनों माता पिता की तबीयत ठीक नहीं है, वो घर पे ही हैं, तो can they take care of these children? And these are the various schemes that are done. I would now like to acknowledge 2-3 people who have helped me to put together this presentation and reviewed it. Swagata Raha, Nina Naik, Radha Nagesh. These are the references that I have used. They're all part of CARA. And I'd once again like to thank Wipro Foundation and all of you for giving me this opportunity. It was a pleasure to listen to Shanta Sinha also. So Rahul, thank you very much for including me on the panel with Shanta Sinha. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sindhu. May I request Professor Sinha to also, we have a few questions and please keep the questions coming, and I have some colleagues helping me. तो सवाल जो आया है हम लोग कोशिश करेंगे जिस ऑर्डर में आया है तो हम लोग पैनलिस्ट के तौर उनको direct करें. So the first question is basically for Professor Shanta Sinha, and this is from Nirmal, who works with the new NGO ICUS Foundation in Chennai. They work in an urban low-income neighborhood. And Professor Sinha, the question Nirmal poses is, there are 3 questions. The first one is, what steps can we take to gain trust in the community and establish strong working relationships, especially in urban low-income neighborhoods in a place like Chennai? So that's the first question. The second question is, what steps have NGOs taken to operate safely and with trust with community and government during this COVID-19 crisis? And third is, what institutions do we need to connect locally to operate effectively with relation to questions 1 and 2? So those are the 3 questions, and I can repeat if you want.
No, you don't need to repeat.
Okay.
But, very interesting question, but I don't know if I should give a long answer or a short answer. I'll be short actually. The entry point for any NGO that I have known has been a survey. The survey is a way of getting into the household, getting to know what they have in the household, whether they have food reserves or not, whether a family has only 2 pairs of clothes or only 1 pair. It's not to just collect data and information in terms of numbers, but to have a sensuous feeling about that family, and that is very, very important. Not to look at it in a very mechanical sense, but when you enter into a family, whether they have a place to sit for a guest like you. I mean, they have to sit outside the cow dung smelling of a drainage, you know. So how do they live like that? So I think the entry point is to get into a household with a pretext of a survey, but it is more than a survey, but it will give you a sensuous feeling of the lives of people there. The second thing I think is important is the purpose of what you are entering for. It could be for health and nutrition of children below 6 years. So that is a different thing. Or it could be for education, or it could be for other kinds of vulnerabilities, of disabilities. So there has to be some focus in your point, although they're all interrelated. You know, a disabled child is also a child without education, a child without nutrition and health, a child without health. But then, if you have no focus, you're not sending any message to the household. It is so important that you have a focus when you enter. And of course, they will tell you that there are so many people who have come, who have taken the data and gone, but did nothing for us. So, by another data collection. So, you need to have good answers for those questions. And I'm sure in your training, you will do that as well. Then, in the trust building comes when you're responding to your initial survey itself. When you find that a girl has been very unwell, or a 5-year-old girl has her ear pus coming out of it, but the parents have not looked at it, they think it's okay and still send the child for a Ranganwadi, this thing. Then you immediately notice and tell the parents, look, she's in pain. She may not have told you, and I can take you to the local sub-center or to the PHC. So somewhere your ability to sort of respond to something the parents have no time, although they care, and doing something like that, I think, is how you uh, get trust, you know. And you have to trust them because they trust you only if you trust them. And this, I think you will have to trust the poor and their capacities to work wonders. Once you trust them, let me tell you, they will fly. They will do much more than what you can, and you will keep walking behind them because they've done so much more. This is all I want to say at the moment. And then institutions, you will have to know what the institutions are. Finally you're working for the institutions to get better, to see that they deliver properly. So I think you will have to train yourself, train your people, get the phone numbers of all of them who are working on the ground, of all the officers, connect them, and in everything that you do, as far as possible, include the local functionaries. That is a suit. You will have to do that. You cannot bypass them. You have to be transparent with them. You may have to confront them, but always include them. And that's the only way you can take things forward.
Thank you, ma'am. There are a few more questions for you, but I'll just take them in the order that they came in. Himangi from Unnati has a question for Sindhu. Has the short-term placement in other families a legal backing? And which law supports this?
The Juvenile Justice Act has two provisions under which short-term placement with families can be done. One is by declaring the family a fit person for temporary care. There is a fit person option in the Juvenile Justice Act. The other is under foster care. So both of them are options under the Act, which can be considered for temporary placement with families.
Thanks, Sindhu. The next question is also for you. This is from Srinivas from Amma Social Welfare Association, Hyderabad. Adoption is a very tedious process. With initiation of CARA, are those simplified, or what's the best way to get adoption faster?
Okay. तो श्रीनिवास, आप हिंदी में या अंग्रेजी में, क्या कौन सी भाषा में बात करूं मैं आपसे? You're from Hyderabad, ना? तो English should be fine. I think I can't speak Telugu. If it was question to Shanta ji, she would have spoken in Telugu. I can speak Kannada, so if you can understand Kannada, I can probably try in Kannada. नहीं, अंग्रेजी में बात करती हूँ.
Yes, it will benefit everyone.
So Srinivas ji, the adoption process is not tedious. The wait list is very long. Two different things. The process of adoption for a child before you place the child in adoption, we need to ensure that there is nobody who can take care of the child. Nobody who can be, made a legal guardian for the child from the child's family. We do not want to take the child and put the child in a completely new setup. अगर उसके कोई relative हैं जो sponsorship और दूसरे स्टेट स्कीम से उस बच्चे की देखभाल कर सकते हैं, तो हमारा सबसे पहला लक्ष्य होगा कि उनको उसी में प्लेस करें. That we would like to place the child within their own family, within their own environs. Right? Only if that is not possible, the child is placed for adoption. Even then, as according to CARA, it's less than 2 months for a child who is below 2 years. So 2 महीने में उस बच्चे को legally free करना होता है और कारा हमारे सर पे बैठते हैं कि बच्चे को legally free करो. ठीक है. और फिर अगर बच्चा 2 साल से ज्यादा है उसकी उम्र, then it is 4 months. So it's 2 months for less than 2 years and 4 months for more than 2 years. So that's so why is it taking so long? It is taking so long because for every child who is available for adoption, there are 30 parents who are waiting. So wait list बड़ा है. और wait list लंबा क्यों है? क्योंकि बच्चे illegally जा रहे हैं. So illegal adoption of children is happening and only people who are working in the grassroots can stop it. The ASHA and the Anganwadi workers can stop it. People who are working in the communities can stop it. क्योंकि आपको पता है, जैसे शांता जी ने पहले कहा था, आपको पता है कि कौन सा बच्चा कहाँ है, कौन सी माँ प्रेग्नेंट है, कौन सी माँ की डिलीवरी कल होने वाली है, और कितने उस फैमिली में 2 लड़कियां हैं और तीसरी लड़की उनको चाहिए नहीं होगी. So all this information is there with people who are in the community, and you all are the first people who can stop this. And if you know that such a thing is happening, please bring it to the notice of the District Child Protection Unit or the Child Welfare Committee or call 109.
Thank you, Sindhu.
थोड़ा लंबा शब्द.
It's good.
But useful.
I got to know. Thank you.
Thank you, Sindhu. Next question is from Himangi, and again for Professor Shanta Sinha. Himangi asks, CWCs are not functional when schools are closed. Adults are facing many issues in the pandemic time, so mobilizing them for children is becoming difficult. Shouldn't the system mobilize teachers, CWCs 1098 for care of the children in such a crisis situation? These systems have to go beyond their regular role and find out ways of reaching out to children. They can take help of local NGOs. Your views, ma'am.
I think your question has all the answers to the question. Certainly, there are so many functionaries. If you take a count in the Gram Panchayat about the number of functionaries for children, there would be at least some 8 or 9 of them, and they will have to work. There is no way in which they cannot work. And of course, there is a safety issue. We have found how ASHA workers are, in fact, taking enormous risks in Telangana, in Andhra, to measure to look at the COVID patients, to measure, see how many of them are ill or not ill. So there is a risk involved in it, and we have to find out how we may overcome. But certainly, let me tell you that again, in the experience that I have had, in these village learning centers, the youth have contacted the school teachers who are local and asked them to help them in saying what more can we do in the learning centers. Or they have propagated everywhere the 1098 helpline. And the Sideline is working enormously, to protect children from child marriage and child abuse. They're really stretching themselves on it. You have the child welfare committees also working very hard. It's not true that they're not working. They may not have a place to sit, but through WhatsApp. Most of them are working through WhatsApp and communicating with each other, saying that this case has come, what do we do? So I think all of them are working well wherever there have been NGOs who have constantly worked with the local institutions. They are at trouble in places where people do not know about the local institutions, have not engaged with them, and in those places the government will have to be proactive. And you can't have NGO presence all over the country. It has only in some places. But then how do you activate all of them? And here I think the government has a huge role to play in telling them, as you have suggested, these are your roles, these are your tasks during COVID, and you better put your act together. All of them are on Zoom, let me tell you. All of them are on WhatsApp call. It's become so accessible to that level of functionaries. Maybe not to the poor migrant labor, agricultural laborer, the farm labor, the construction worker, and those children, they have no access to internet and online, but the functionaries up to that level are communicating with each other, and we have to find out, the government has to find out ingenious methods of empowering them to use these online facilities to support children and rescue them.
We have another question for Sindhu. Sindhu, this is from Divya, who is a colleague in the Wipro Foundation. Are there any specific orders or policies for children with disabilities around adoption?
Children with disabilities are adoptable. If that's the question, they are included in the process of adoption, and CARA has a special module designed within the caring system where children, which facilitates fast tracking of children with disabilities. This time it's short.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. And there aren't any more questions in terms of the question and answer. Please, if you have any further questions, do share on the Q&A. And if you want to raise your hand and come in with your voice also, I don't know whether that can be facilitated. Krunal can look into that. But if you have any questions, or if you want to share some of your own experiences, I think that would also be nice.
There's one more that's come up, Rahul.
This is again for Sindhu from Harita, who is from the Amma Social Welfare Association. If a child faces any issues after she or he is adopted by their extended family or by any other, whom do you contact? Whom does the child contact?
The child can contact 1098 like every other child can, and if they are in touch with the specialized adoption agency from where they had been placed, which कुछ बड़े बच्चे आजकल बड़े बच्चे भी adoption में जाते हैं, तो काफी बड़े बच्चों के पास उनकी सोशल वर्कर या adoption agency का टेलीफोन नंबर रहता है, वो उनको कांटेक्ट करते हैं बड़े बच्चे जो हैं. लेकिन जब बच्चा जब बड़ा होता है, given as an infant, they can always contact 1098. And many agencies, many states today have other helplines which can be contacted. If they need mental health support, they can contact them.
Another question to Sindhu. So is it legal if a grandmother or a relative looks after a child in the absence of parents without going through a legal adoption process? This is from Shivani.
If a grandmother looks after the child, it is she would need, for it to be legalized, she would actually need to apply for legal guardianship, right? But हम उस बच्चे को grandmother से वापस नहीं लेंगे. We will see that the child remains with the grandmother and help the grandmother legalize the process if she wishes to. And if she wishes to take long-term care of the child, then it needs to be legalized, and it can be done through the legal guardianship process. She can become a legal guardian and take care of the child under the Guardian and Wards Act. But one more thing I'd like to say, if the grandmother is a Hindu, I didn't touch upon the Juvenile Justice Act today, but if the grandmother is a Hindu, she can apply for adoption of the child under the Hindu Adoption and Maintenance Act. I didn't touch upon it because there are a lot of loopholes in that act, which is what is causing illegal adoption. But अगर grandmother ही लेना चाहती है तो उसको उसमें प्रावधान है और वो कर सकती हैं. She'll have to go through court to do it.
The next is more an open question and resonates with something which I also thought of bringing up with both of you. In terms of resources that you might know and which might benefit partner organizations. Kushal's is a bit more pointed. Kushal is from Samayit Shala. Are there platforms where children-friendly materials around COVID awareness is available? He says we mostly see adult awareness or text-heavy information around online. So child-friendly materials around COVID awareness.
Shanta Sinha ji.
No. I have seen a couple of them uh, in English, not in India, but done in Africa and done in Europe. But I have not seen any COVID material in India. The best material that I have seen is the John Hopkins University's material on COVID for children, which is being used by the Odisha group for tribal children there. They discovered it and they're quite happy with using that material.
Karnataka mein, if you're in Karnataka, there is a lot of good material for children developed by the Child Rights Trust, which is available on the Directorate website also, if I'm not mistaken. And possibly Save the Children and UNICEF have developed something, but I haven't seen it myself to comment on it. But this, I would love to see the John Hopkins material.
This is Vasudev.
Yeah, Vasudev Sharma developed a lot of material, including hand wash and sanitization, everything.
Yeah, and this is also, again, and many of our partner organizations are also doing interesting work in terms of just children awareness and with children. We haven't been able to collate, but I think it would be, but many of these are in the vernacular. So I remember Patang, which is an NGO working in Odisha with us, doing great work, and supposedly it has been also highlighted by the Odisha government as a kind of a resource at the state level. Yeah, I think we should try to collate some of this and then probably have it on our kind of open sharing system. That's a good point. A few more questions I'll just take up. One is for Sindhu. Is there any follow-up process of frequent checking system from the adoption agency? These are becoming very, yeah, I think some larger questions would be good, but this is also from CHDHC. Yeah.
ये तो adoption के लिए questions हैं. I would have liked to have COVID specific cases questions, but हाँ, there is a process of checking up, which is officially done for 2 years after the child is placed in adoption. आपको अगर adoption के बारे में और ज़्यादा जानकारी चाहिए तो you can go to kara.nic.in and the whole adoption regulations are available downloaded. There are also, presentations, etc., which you can see, and some very nice videos available on the net.
Nirmal has another question again for both of you. When initiating the process of working with local government or functionaries, is there any good starting point? Good within or just start at any point? Also, is there a document or working paper which details the list of different government departments and their working relationships and functions? Yeah, I would say no on the top of my head, but again, processing.
No, I think if you're in this field, you will have to do your homework and make the list. And it's quite good to do the list as a joint activity of your entire team. You sit together and then you make a list and then find out who's good, who's not good. But it's always good to negotiate and engage with the local functionary. But the only thing is that you have to take a non-threatening, non-intimidating attitude towards a local functionary and think of them not as an adversary, but as a person who is going to be your partner now or a potential partner. And I always feel that the face of a system whom you see is your friend. He is the last in the hierarchy. Either the ASHA worker or the Anganwadi worker or the school teacher or the even a doctor in a hospital. And they are the visible persons in the hierarchy. They don't take any decisions. They are as much victims of the system as the people whom you're trying to support. And I think there has to be an alliance built and a trust built between the last functionary, which could even be the head constable, and the community, to expose the system and to educate the system. It's so important to build trust with them and not to question them. And you have to be sympathetic, find out under what odds they are working. You can't blame an Anganwadi worker for their not being rice and then going to the press and saying this Anganwadi center does not have rice, this Anganwadi worker is not giving. But dialogue, discuss, find out, ask her how many attempts have you made for it to come? And do you need any support from us to make your Anganwadi center work? Do that with the school teacher. I think it's so important that we build alliances with the last functionary, not to intimidate them, not to threaten them. Think of them as your allies. If they're not now, that sooner than later they will be your allies more than anybody else in the system. So that would be my generic answer to this question.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor. There's one question for Sindhu. This is related to children with disabilities. It's the Commissioner for Children with Disability who is responsible, but the JJ Act is not very clear about that. Whom should we approach under the current pandemic?
I would think approach the Commissioner for Disabilities. The Commissioner.
Commissioner.
But it depends upon what it is for also.
Ravi, do you want to come in and have any clarifications on that? Okay. This again, I don't know. I think these are there are state-specific guidelines as far as I know. This is from Nivedita and Samaveshi. Are there any guidelines to run a community learning center for children during COVID? I think there are, as far as I know, there are state-specific guidelines as and when being issued by the states.
I think one will have to leave it to at least now leave it to the creativity and autonomy of the teacher or whoever is there locally, and facilitate them rather than tell them from top, you do this and you do that. We have seen how they have worked so well. They've asked children to color leaves, they've asked children to sing songs, to play, to keep a group of 20 children engaged for 3 hours is no joke, and these people have done it, and they didn't get any guidelines from anywhere. They've done it on their own, and of course the NGOs and some local teachers have facilitated them. Trust the local, and I think things will work. We have depended far too much on centralized guidelines. The details never needs to be worked out at the center.
Mangi has another question from Unnati. Again, in one of our villages, one 13-year child committed suicide, which was not reported with the police. Who is responsible for reporting of the deaths of the children?
I don't know if it is. A suicide has to be reported, and it's usually the revenue officer, the village revenue officer, who takes care of these kinds of situations. And it has to be the village revenue officer who reports such an incident to the police department.
If the suicide comes to the notice of the health department is also supposed to report, aren't they?
Yeah, but it has to go for investigation.
Yes.
It cannot. In any death, I think will have to be. There has to be an autopsy on death. And I really don't know what the legal system is, but for those who are working on health, especially on health of children in 0 to 6 years, they have worked out systems of Mothers Committee and the Gram Panchayat to do an audit of every maternal mortality and infant mortality. and to report to the, as Sidhu has said, to the health department, and if it needs to be criminalized, also to the police department.
Yeah, there are some other comments. I don't see any questions which are relevant.
Right.
There's a question on the Q&A box, Rahul.
You can share that if you want.
Yeah. I'm not sure whom it's addressed to, but this is Danish from Asta. He asks if he finds any girl on the street who's from good family background but has some mental health issues. He's gone to the police station to handle the case, but says that they can't do anything. Maybe he needs to take the girl to his NGO and give them shelter. So what can be done in this process?
Has he tried calling 1098? Has he tried calling 1098?
Maybe we can get Danish to share. Krunal, maybe unmute and.
Hello.
Yeah, Danish, go ahead, please.
Hi, good evening, all of you. Thank you for taking my question. Yes, I went to the helpline number also 109. They said you have to go to the police station and just register and lodge a missing complaint. But the police station one guy, sub-inspector, has not filed the complaint, and he said that you can take to NGO, we can't do anything. And after 3 days, I tried to find out the girl. She is not there, sitting regularly on the stand where I usually found her. So means it was very disappointed for me. I was not able to handle that situation because I was not aware about the policies and legal issues.
That's very unfortunate, because the Childline should have taken and registered the case. There is no way.
Even the bags and Aadhaar card and everything has been stolen from her because she was not stable with her mental conditions, and she was talking every time, mom, dad, 3 to 4 words she just used to speak. But policeman and this police station was not at all a cooperative, and women helpline number also didn't work at the right time when the solution I was needed expected from that people, that they can give a complete guidelines how I can place that girl in any places like mental hospitals also of the government and anything like that. So I just wanted to want the information. What should I do if I get such type of cases next time, so that I can be aware and prepared, so that I can place the right position if I found any cases next time.
Well, see, 1098 is your first place to go. That's your first go-to place. If they don't respond, then you yourself as a citizen can take the child before a child welfare committee. There is nothing to stop you from doing that, provided the girl, is able to come with you also, right? I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So you can take the child before a child welfare committee, find out where your child welfare committee is sitting. You can even call the child welfare committee and share this.
Okay,
If
thank you, ma'am.
1098 is not responding, yeah.
This is again, I think this question, Nirmal, goes into tomorrow's panel better because we have some health related, but again, just to bring it up because it's come up today.
No, but this is an indication of how little the citizens know on what they can do regarding children in need of care and protection. Not many know what CWC is about. Not many know what Childline is about. There are so many institutions under the JJ Act, and there needs to be a greater publicity of all this. And in fact, he should have also perhaps gone to an NGO who are professionals in this, and they may have directed him. It's really pathetic that nobody knows about Child Welfare Committee or Childline, and I think the government has to do much more to publicize. principals. Danish, did you know about Child Welfare Committee?
Hello.
Did
Hello.
you know there was something called a Child Welfare Committee?
I was not aware of that, frankly speaking to you.
Thank you.
Maybe we need to do a session on the Juvenile Justice Act itself and more from the perspective of what I can do as a citizen.
That is, I think. Yeah. So there is again a health related question. I don't know whether this is relevant for this panel, Nirmal, but just placing it out there. Are you seeing any information from the field in terms of significant effects on mortality among children due to causes apart from COVID-19? If significant, how much change have you seen? Any steps we can build in terms of community capacity in health going forward?
Sorry.
I can just add to that a little bit. From the community workers who have been working in the Madhya Pradesh area, whom I closely interact with in the Chhatarpur district, what I understand, and Shivpuri also, what I understand is, I don't know about the death part, but huge effect on nutrition of children last time. And that can have long-term effects on their health. So yes, we need to build, we need to strengthen the ASHA workers, we need to help them do the food distribution, and we also possibly need to help the communities understand nutrition better of children and have local ways of managing their own nutrition.
Thank you, Sindhu. We are almost out of time, and so I think we will wrap up now and with a very big thank you to both the speakers today. Thank you, Sindhu. Thank you, Professor Shanta Sinha, for being with us. And thank you, all of you, for joining, and hope you'll be joining us for the sessions tomorrow and day after. Again, I hope this was useful in terms of your own work. We gained a lot in terms of what we heard from both of you. Thank you again for spending time with us.
Thank you. Bye-bye.